How good is it to be at ARC? Well, last month I attended the 125th anniversary of Australia's first Parliament, held in Melbourne's Exhibition Centre, the very site where our Parliament met in 1901. I felt like a lonely Conservative, like Hiro Onoda, the Japanese soldier who kept fighting the Second World War in the Philippines into the 70s. It was very much an elites-only event which oozed remorse for our colonial past. There were no Australian flags, no mention of our Constitution, our British heritage. There was a passing nod to His Majesty King Charles in the Governor-General's speech, but there was a lot about how Australia had changed for the better to be more diverse, inclusive, tolerant as a nation. In fact, our Prime Minister crowed that there was certainly no one in the House of Representatives with a surname like Albanese. There weren't women in the first Parliament, and where were Indigenous Australians? What the Prime Minister chose to overlook was that Australia's great success as a democratic experiment came from the very institutions we inherited from Britain, and the best features we borrowed from both the British and the American Constitution. A lot of people like to say we're a Westminster democracy. We're actually a Washminster democracy. Our Senate is American. Yes, it's easy to parody the self-loathing of the left. Much harder to examine our own side's conscience and ask, where have we actually gone wrong? It is fantasy to think that the powerful ideas born 200 years ago, implemented by the left, that we've heard about this morning, can actually be reversed at any given general election. But our side does have a natural advantage, our faith in the family. Let me offer a practitioner's view of three policy areas: education, migration and the family, and how that's played out in a liberal democracy like Australia. In the government I served, 4 education ministers met their match with the powerful education lobby. One genuinely tried to deregulate the sector, but was up against the machine, and the Senate blocked those reforms twice. The left has sought through our universities, and I'm sure it is similar for liberal democracies across the globe, to groom elites to a certain worldview, the future judges, politicians, decision makers. But they've also focused on educating the educators so that the very masses, our children, can be indoctrinated. Here are 2-year-olds at an Australian childcare centre. They're actually painting sorry logs for what they have done to Aboriginal Australians. Learning shame for our shared British history at their most innocent. Before becoming a senator, I was lecturer in education at a faculty of one of our most prestigious universities. And so I was a little bit sceptical at the claim that if only we reform the national curriculum, everything will be solved. Because if a student teacher spends 4 years being grounded in white guilt, victimhood, climate catastrophism, and even anti-Semitism, that's what gets passed on behind the closed door of a classroom. And ironically, Australia's literacy and numeracy scores have been sliding for years. And the education industry responds by questioning whether the OECD actually has its methodology right. Even this very week, in another first, teachers in Australia have publicly raised their concerns about educating about the Holocaust because it will upset their Muslim students. That is post-Bondi, post the Islamic terrorist attack that saw Australian Jews slaughtered on our iconic Bondi Beach. Our supposedly best universities allowed anti-Semitism to run unchecked with permanent camps like this at Sydney University. Jewish lecturers' offices were urinated on, Jewish students harassed, intimidated, research careers cancelled. Higher education in Australia is our fourth largest export industry. Do not underestimate this industry's power. That is after our iron ore, our coal and our natural gas, which we're very, very good at exporting and underpins our economy. High-paying international students at these universities comprise of 3.5% of our total Australian population. That's the highest per capita in the world. We have to ask the difficult questions here today. Is it any longer worth preserving institutions that can no longer be reformed? My firm belief now is that the only way to fix higher education in Australia is to actually break it. And to break it, by ending their funding model through international students. Just on migration, nothing changes a country more quickly, for better or for worse, than rapid immigration. Successive centre-right governments in Australia achieved something genuinely remarkable. So on education, we had a lot of fails. So I think we're going to have to break it. On migration, we've had some successes. We absolutely stopped illegal immigration. We stopped the boats. We had a flotilla of rickety boats, 50,000 desperate souls who'd paid their life savings to people smugglers had arrived. Stopping the boats was difficult because the left, we were constantly attacked for lacking compassion and kindness. We were even attacked from our own side in government. Those attacks were relentless. But the Australian people supported our resolve and our actions, and we succeeded. We succeeded to the point where this is now bipartisan policy in Australia. The left-wing government has adopted the centre-right's campaign. So I want to say a big shout out to Tony Abbott if he's in the room, and I think there was a minister at the time, Scott Morrison as well, who assisted with that. But, thank you. They deserve a clap because now the world is coming to Australia to ask, how did you do this? But, centre-right governments shut the back door to illegals, but we kept the front door wide open. The Labor Party has since pushed high immigration to warp speed. Australia operates currently and historically a non-discriminatory immigration policy and takes in more migrants per head than any other Western country. Our economy has become addicted to it. It appeals to big business, big property developers, big universities, and big, lazy governments of all colours. Conservatives around the cabinet tables I served on were meek when we should have been strong, accepting the economic orthodoxy for higher immigration over genuine concerns of Australian citizens. Because the social cost to Australian families of that policy is incalculable. Increasing national GDP makes prime ministers and big businesses feel very good about themselves. Our economy is healthy, therefore our country's healthy. But what if under that is masked a fall in per capita GDP, household GDP? Because that's actually what's happening in Australia. And that tells the true health of our society. Houses are now unaffordable for young people well into their 30s. It puts pressure on them to be able to start a family. If you love your country and respect your past, you shouldn't apologise for discriminating over who comes to live in it. Not on race, but on shared values. If you believe Sharia law is superior to the laws we inherited from Britain, I'm afraid Australia ain't for you. Defence of the homeland should be number one priority of any government, but surely the defence of the family must come a close second. If we really believe this, our policy focus as parliamentarians and thought leaders should be on family housing, supportive tax structures, and support parents' choice about care for their young children, not universal industrial care that is supervised by the state. Currently in Australia, we're paying in excess of $16 billion a year and taking that choice away from parents. On the calamity of the falling birth rate, we blame affluence, birth control, climate fears, or the entitled, in my case, I've got 4 adult children, the entitled attitudes of our own children. But are these symptoms or are they causes? The most natural thing in the world is to make babies. But there's no escaping that modern life is becoming more incompatible with that biological reality. Politics is downstream of culture, not upstream. Parliaments can pass laws and set priorities, but only 2 people can find each other, and that often takes longer than we think, commit and get on with it. So young men are going to have to pony up. They are. Young women are going to have to accept that biology is a real thing and the runway is short. And we, all of us, have to recognise, accept and promote that having children is a social good. Look at my beautiful grandson. How do we reconcile a modern life that is affluent, full of material things, but it is laced with anxiety, exhaustion, broken relationships? Perhaps the fall of the Berlin Wall bred a complacency that Western civilization had triumphed. In fact, our enemies merely regrouped to take full control of the civil service, the corporates, the police, and even our sporting codes. Removing powerful incumbents from their citadels is akin to urban warfare. The left targeted the family because they understood what conservatives have always known. The family is the one institution, the one social construct that the state can never fully capture. So if the family is their problem, it must be our solution. The market exists for humans to express their autonomy and agency, to build wealth, for people to chart their own destiny, provide for their families, build wealth for the future. But there has to be limits. There has to be limits. Limits on power, elected and unelected, and on the excesses of human appetites and behaviour. My truth, my morality, my choice assumes we all live in our own atomised moral and social universes, where everyone's their own pope, even we Protestants. In 2025, the centre-right in Australia suffered our worst election loss in our history. It was not just because we were out-campaigned. We had breached trust with the Australian people. Our task is to reflect that in Australia, our citizens are natural conservatives, protectors of their family, involved in their communities, and a deep love of their country. Because we're not going back to a homogenous, faith-filled society anytime soon. So our long march has to begin. So the lonely conservative in that Melbourne crowd last month, it turns out, is not so alone. When Burke published Reflections in 1790, when enthusiasm for the French Revolution, get out your guillotines, was at its peak, he found no support, not even within his own party. Yet within a decade, history had shifted. The conservative tradition has always been a minority position in moments of radical enthusiasm. It is a tradition of great hope and faith and love for the family. And as St. Paul wrote, if God is for us, who can be against us? Thank you.